Hello beautiful friends, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm so glad that this video found you today. We are here to talk about my June book of the month predictions. Now it appears that June is going to be an incredibly heavy release month, and so I want to go ahead and anticipate that book of the month is going to have a lot of fantastic releases. And because I have so many to talk to you about, we are just going to go ahead and jump right in. We are going to start as always with the mystery thriller horror category. And of course I could not do a June book of the month prediction video without talking about Riley Sager's newest release, and this time it is called With a Vengeance. Now I am making this prediction knowing full well that if Riley Sager is going to be featured, his books are likely not going to be available immediately on June 1st when the rest of the books come out. He is typically put as either a June mid-month add-on or as a July add-on, so it is highly likely that if we are going to see him, we're not going to see him until that point. This definitely feels like it's going to be a little bit maybe more of a classic mystery. It is set in 1942 and it says 6 people destroyed Anna Matheson's family. 12 years later, she's ready for retribution. Under false pretense, Anna has lured those responsible for her family's downfall onto a luxury train from Philadelphia to Chicago, an overnight journey of 13 hours. Her goal? Confront the people who've wronged her, get them to confess their crime, and deliver them into the hands of authorities waiting at the end of the line. Justice will at last be served. But Anna's plan is quickly derailed by the murder of one of the passengers. As the train barrels through the night, it becomes clear that someone else on board is enacting their own form of revenge, and that they won't stop until everyone else is dead. So yes, that very much sounds like a classic murder mystery. It is going to be kind of a locked room mystery as everybody is stuck on the train. It could potentially be an and then there were none situation where a person is going to be picked off one by one. I'm not necessarily vibing with the time period in which he's choosing to set this story, but I love Riley Sager. I know that he's hit or miss, but regardless of how I feel, his books are typically always a good, entertaining time, and I'm really excited to get to this one in June. Another big name that has a new release coming out in June is Lisa Juul with Don't Let Him In. Now this is one that is not being released until the later part of the month, so if she is featured, it's either going to be a very early release or it's going to be featured in July. Lisa Juul has been featured multiple times on Book of the Month. Her newest release last year was also featured, and so I would be very surprised if she was not featured again. This says, Nick Radcliffe is a man of substance and good taste. He has a smile that can melt the coldest heart and a knack for putting others at ease. He's just what Nina Swan needed in her life after her husband's unexpected death. But to Nina's adult daughter, Ash, Nick seems too slick, too polished, too good to be true. Without telling her mother, Ash begins digging into Nick's past, and what she finds is more than unsettling. Martha is a florist living in a neighboring town with her infant daughter and her devoted husband Alistair. But lately Alistair has been traveling more and more frequently for work, disappearing for days at a time. When Martha questions him about his frequent absences, he always has a legitimate explanation, but Martha can't share the feeling that something isn't right. Nina, Martha, and Ash are on a collision course with a shocking truth that is far darker than anyone could have imagined, and all three are about to wish they had heeded the same warning. Don't let him in. Past won't stay buried forever. So it definitely sounds like this is going to be a setup for a man maybe living multiple lives and conning multiple women. But Lisa Juul is a master of these multiple perspectives and weaving them together in a way that you don't necessarily expect. So I am very intrigued by this premise. I am absolutely looking forward to this one, and I will be quick to snag it if it is featured on Book of the Month in June. Another repeat author that has a release coming out in June is Shaun Gilbert. At least I believe that is how you pronounce this name. It could be Sion as it's spelled, but I do believe that is not entirely correct. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But her newest release is called I Did Warn Her. It says, the Ophelia is your typical billionaire lot, ridiculously luxurious, owned by a ruthless money man, and staffed by a crew whose only job is to indulge the guests' every wish. Model gorgeous Sasha is a last-minute hire for a week-long Atlantic crossing. She joins fellow stewardess Jade, Imogen, Euphemia, and Lola. The Ophelia stewardesses are almost identical, blonde and model gorgeous, and all were lured to the Ophelia by high wages and a chance to leave their problems behind when they set sail. But despite its sleek opulence, the Ophelia isn't as heavenly as it seems. A stewardess on the previous charter died under mysterious circumstances, the guests' expensive jewelry keeps disappearing, and the crew grows steadily more and more suspicious of one another. Then the yacht's owner brings aboard his best friend and 2 more women, also beautiful, also hiding something. When a crew member turns up dead after a night of partying, everyone on the yacht is a suspect. Who is the jewel thief? Who is the murderer? What will happen when the light goes out and the crew and the guests are finally on equal footing? So I think that this is totally up Book of the Month's alley. They absolutely love them a good locked room mystery. They love these good kind of vacation type settings, whether it's like a tropical island or something like this on a billionaire's boat. I think that this would be the perfect book for them to feature, especially as we are heading into the summer months. I think the vibes are going to be there. I didn't read She Started It. It's not really one that I was too terribly interested in, and I don't think that I would pick this one up either because this just sounds like it's going to be kind of like a popcorn thriller, maybe nothing of substance. But if you did enjoy her last release, you might want to be on the lookout for this one as well. Julie Clark, another repeat author that has been featured on Book of the Month a couple of times, also has a new release coming out in June called The Ghostwriter. This says, June 1975. The Taylor family shatters in a single night when two teenage siblings are found dead in their own home. The only surviving sibling, Vincent, never shakes the whispers and accusations that he was the one who killed them. Decades later, the legend only grows as his career as a horror writer skyrockets. Ghostwriter Olivia Dumont has spent her entire professional life hiding the fact that she is the only child of Vincent Taylor. Now on the brink of financial ruin, she's offered a job to ghostwrite her father's last book. What she doesn't know, though, is that this project is another one of his lies, because it's not another horror novel he wants her to write. After 50 years of silence, Vincent Taylor is finally ready to talk about what really happened the night in 1975. I'm actually really intrigued by the premise of that. I haven't actually read anything from Julie Clark, but I've heard a lot of really great things about the book that she wrote. I think it was called like The Last Flight or something to that effect. And I'm intrigued by the premise of this. So a daughter is being asked to ghostwrite a story for her father, who has a notorious history. Everybody thinks he killed his siblings back in 1975. She is going to be writing the story, which is not fictional. It is going to be like the true story of what actually happened. And I tend to love those types of stories. I feel like this is kind of giving me The Only One Left vibes a little bit by Riley Sager. So this is one that I could potentially be convinced to pick up if it is featured on Book of the Month. All right, and then the last book that I have for this category is actually a debut. It is a book called We Don't Talk About Carol by Kristen L Barry. In the wake of her grandmother's passing, Sydney Singleton finds a hidden photograph of a little girl who looks more like Sydney than her own sister or mother. She soon discovers the mystery girl in the photograph is her aunt, Carol, who was one of 6 North Carolina black girls to go missing in the 1960s. For the last several decades, not a soul has talked about Carol or what really happened to her. But now, with her grandmother gone and Sydney looking to start a family of her own, she is determined to unravel the truth behind her long-lost aunt's disappearance and the sinister silence that surrounds her. Unfortunately, this is familiar territory for Sydney. Years earlier, while she worked the crime beat as a journalist, her obsession with the case of another missing girl led to a psychotic break. And now, in the suffocating grip of fertility treatments and a marriage that's beginning to crumble, Sydney's relentless pursuit for answers might just lead her down the same path of self-destruction. As she delves deeper into Carol's fate, her own troubled past reemerges, clawing its way to the surface with a vengeance. The web of secrets and lies entangling her family leaves Sydney questioning everything: her fixation on the missing girls, her future as a mom, and her trust in those she knows and loves. That is yet another one that is really, really intriguing. I love all of the different tropes and themes going on around here. I am very interested in this one, and I really do hope that it is featured on Book of the Month. It would be a debut. It would be a BIPOC author. There's going to be a lot of great diversity representation in here, and I would love to see it. So this is one that I'm highly anticipating, and I do think that regardless of whether it is featured on Book of the Month, I would love to add it to my TBR because I'm intrigued. All right, moving on into the romance category, I only have 2 that I want to talk about here. I find the romance category pretty difficult because in any given month, I feel like there's a plethora of romance releases to choose from, and I don't think Book of the Month is really very consistent in when or if they choose to feature romance and what romances they do tend to feature. I feel like they're kind of all over the place for the most part. So I just kind of picked the 2 that stood out to me. One is going to be a repeat author, and one I picked solely because of the premise, because it's set to be The Hating Game meets You've Got Mail. It is called Last Night Was Fun by Holly Michelle. It says Emmy Jameson lives by 3 rules: no dating, no sharing personal news at work, and baseball above everything. As the only female data analyst for a professional baseball team, Emmy is constantly trying to prove herself, especially when she's put up for a senior analyst position against her arrogant, infuriating coworker, Gabe Olson. Sure, he's gorgeous and smart, and he was a baseball star in college who knows the sport inside and out, but so does Emmy. She is not going to lose to him again. There will be no distractions this summer, not even her sister's pending destination wedding in Mexico, for which she needs to find a +1. But then she receives a text from an unknown number with a simple message: last night was fun. When she strikes up a conversation with the mystery texter, they realize that he was given a fake phone number after a bad date that just so happened to be Emmy's. Despite her rules, Emmy can't deny the instant connection she feels, and soon finds herself falling for the stranger on the other side of the screen and inviting him to her sister's wedding. Emmy's world turns upside down when her mystery man turns out to be none other than Gabe Olson. They are left having to travel to the wedding together while trying to sort out which version of their relationship is real, their in-person rivalry or the deep connection they found in their messages. So offhand, I actually think that's going to be a really cute synopsis. However, I am concerned by a couple of things. So first of all, I actually DNF'd The Hating Game. I didn't get the hype behind that. I found it was very insta-lusty. Like, you have these 2 people who supposedly hate each other, but yet like within the first couple of chapters, they are all over each other in like an elevator or something like that. So I didn't buy into it. And also, even though You've Got Mail is one of my favorite literary tropes, it only works for me if it is done well. And a lot of times it's not done well. I feel like in these books, there's not enough communications for me to actually buy the fact that these 2 people are falling for each other. So the communications really have to be plentiful and they have to be of substance in order for me to buy that these 2 people who have never met and who don't know each other at all are falling for each other. And I don't necessarily think I would get that here. I am very interested to hear more about this story from people who read it, and maybe in the future I could be convinced to pick it up, but I don't think this is one I would grab. However, I know there are a lot of people out here who would would love to see it. And then the last prediction I have for this category is actually the newest release from Josie Silver called Slow Burn Summer. Josie Silver's releases have been featured multiple times in the past, not all of them though, but she is an interesting example of Book of the Month skipping a release and then coming back and featuring newer releases. I don't know if I said the title of this already, but it is called Slow Burn Summer, and it says talent agent Charlie Francisco has 3 problems: a divorce that ended his screenwriting career, a business he never planned to inherit, and a take your breath away romance novel whose author wants nothing to do with its publication. The book is a surefire hit if only his agency can find someone to play author on its summer book tour. Enter Kate Elliott, a former soap actress who's miraculously right for the part at the very moment her life seems to be going all wrong. Kate is still recovering from her own divorce, and Charlie's job offer is a lifeline. She agrees to the pretense for all interviews, signings, and appearances surrounding the novel's publication, but she can't know who really wrote the remarkable story, the one so beautiful it made her believe in love again. When Kate and Charlie meet, they're all friction and sparks. The one thing they have in common is they're determined to play their respective parts, but as the summer heats up and the lies get bigger and bigger, can they stick to their lines or will they go off script? I'm not really getting anything from that. It sounds like it's going to be a cute, fun time. I really enjoyed One Day in December by Josie Silver, and I've also read A Winter in New York, which was just fine. I don't think that I am intrigued enough to pick this one up, but I do know, again, she has been featured multiple times. I wouldn't be surprised to see her again. Next, we are going to quickly just go into the historical fiction category because I only have one book to feature for this category. It is a book called When Sleeping Women Wake by Pay Yin, and I do believe that this is a debut novel. 1941. Following the Japanese invasion of Shanghai, the wealthy Tang family has settled in Hong Kong, believing it to be protected under British occupation. As the first wife of the family, Mingzhu leads a glamorous, if at times lonely existence, mothering the son of her husband's concubine, overseeing her daughter Chiang's education, and directing their household of servants, including her longtime confidant, Biu. But when the Japanese invade Hong Kong, the paths of Mingzhu, Chiang, and Biu widely diverge. Although Mingzhu's affinity for language spares her from physical labor, she finds herself coerced to either work for the enemy or face certain death. Chiang and Biu scrape through days of factory work and meager food supplies, constantly on the run from newly unfolded dangers, until an encounter with the East River column-resistant fighters separate them. The longer these women become embroiled in the brutal occupation that engulfs the region, the more determined they are to fight back. Can they support the resistance and still find their way back to one another? At once monumental and intimate, When Sleeping Women Wake powerfully explores how ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things and the unwavering hope that love can carry us through even the darkest of times. So once again, we have a debut. We have a BIPOC author from a marginalized community. This is going to follow the Japanese invasion of Shanghai and Hong Kong and what happens with 3 women during their experience with this. I think that it sounds very intriguing. If I wasn't really moving away from historical fiction at this time, this could be one that I would potentially consider picking up. But I do think that this would be such a strong contender for this category for Book of the Month, and I really hope to see it there. Typically, I do save the sci-fi, fantasy, and magical realism category for last, but once again, I only have one book to share for this category for the month of June. Also, I apologize if the lighting keeps going in and out. It is a very cloudy day and the clouds keep moving and blocking out the sun, so I apologize for the lighting difference. I'm noticing as I'm filming it gets super bright and then super dim. But the book in question, of course, is the newest release from V.E. Schwab called Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. They have featured V.E. Schwab in the past. This is set to be a huge release, and I know a lot of people would really appreciate seeing this on Book of the Month. We actually have a full synopsis for this now. A couple of months ago when this was first announced, we didn't really have much, so I am going to read this here. 1532, Santo Domingo de la Causa. A young girl grows up wild and wily. Her beauty is only outmatched by her dream of escape, but Maria knows she can only ever be a prize or a pawn in the games played by men. When an alluring stranger offers an alternate path, Maria makes a desperate choice. She vows to have no regrets. All right, that's giving a little bit of Addie LaRue vibes right there. 1827, London. A young woman lives an idyllic but cloistered life on her family's estate until a moment of forbidden intimacy sees her shipped off to London. Charlotte's tender heart and seemingly impossible wishes are swept away by an invitation from a beautiful widow, but the price of freedom is higher than she could have imagined. 2019, Boston. College was supposed to be her chance to be someone new. That's why Alice moved halfway across the world, leaving her old life behind. But after an out-of-character one-night stand leaves her questioning her past, her present, and her future, Alice throws herself into the hunt for answers and revenge. This is a story about life, how it ends and how it starts. Now, ultimately, that's not giving too terribly much, right? You have 3 women, 3 very different timelines, but I have heard that what makes this speculative is there's going to be vampires in it. I am actually getting like also a little bit of a combination with Wayward here because you have these 3 very distinct women and the 3 very different timelines and something that is likely going to connect them all. I'm really interested to see what V.E. Schwab does with this. V.E. Schwab is an author that writes so widely and not all of her books work for me. Addie LaRue really worked for me, and I'm hoping that this is more in line with that kind of storytelling, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now, I won't be getting the Book of the Month edition if it is featured because I do believe it's going to be June's Fairy Loot book, but also, as I've mentioned before, I don't like my fantasy books in the Book of the Month edition, but I will absolutely be sourcing this book at some point in June so that I can read it, and I'm very excited about it. All right, and then the final category we are going to talk about is the contemporary/literary fiction category. I saved it for last because this is by far the biggest category. I believe I have 7 books to talk about, so I wanted to go ahead and save it for last. Now, the first book that I want to mention is actually Nikki Erlich's newest release called The Poppy Field. Nikki Erlich wrote The Measure, which was an extremely popular book when it was released. I don't believe that it was featured on Book of the Month, but I do believe that they could potentially want to feature her now based on the success of that story. This says, "Welcome to the poppy fields, where there's hope for even the most battered hearts to heal. Here in a remote stretch of the California desert lies an experimental and controversial treatment center that allows those suffering from the heartache of loss to sleep through their pain. After patients awaken from this prolonged state of slumber, they will finally be healed, but only if they're willing to accept the potential shadowy side effects. On a journey to this mystical destination are 4 very different strangers and 1 little dog. Ava, a book illustrator, Ray, a fireman, Sasha, an occupational therapist, Sky, a free spirit, and a friendly pup named PJ. As they attempt to make their way from the Midwest all the way to the poppy fields, where they hope to find Ellis, its brilliant, enigmatic founder, each of their past secrets and mysterious motivations threaten to derail their voyage. A high-concept speculative novel about heartache, hope, and human resilience, The Poppy Fields explores the path of grief and healing, a journey at once profoundly universal and unique to every person, posing the question, how do we heal in the wake of great loss? And how far are we willing to go in order to be healed?" I do believe that this is going to be a really popular release based on the success of The Measure, and I wouldn't be shocked to see it on Book of the Month at all. Now, this next one I'm actually mentioning primarily just because it caught my attention, because it's going to be the adult debut for Renee Ahdieh, and I thought that that was pretty intriguing. I don't know whether Book of the Month would feature it, but I did want to go ahead and mention it here. The book is called Park Avenue. Jia Song has always been destined for greatness. As the daughter of Korean bodega owners, she promised herself that she would have every Fifth Avenue luxury when she grew up, and it is all finally within reach. She has just made junior partner at her prestigious Manhattan law firm. She can count on her 2 best friends to have her back, and she's about to score the ultra-luxe gold-on-gold Birkin bag of her dreams. So when her boss asks her to sit in on the hush-hush family implosion of a high-level client, she accepts without hesitation, only to find out that it is one of the most famous Korean families in the world. The Park family's net worth is estimated at $1 billion, and their mega successful Korean beauty brand has shaped the culture for the past 2 decades. But the patriarch is filing for divorce while his wife is dying, and their 3 children can't stop snapping at one another. With both the family fortune and legacy under threat from the worst kind of scandal, it's up to Jia to set things right, and she only has a month to do it. As Jia sorts through the lies and subterfuge, chasing the truth across the globe on private jets, she finds herself falling for this broken, badly behaving family in ways she can't quite explain. But it is also becoming clear that the Parks are hiding dark secrets. Can she find the truth in time to protect the Parks' fortune, secure her success at the farm, and can she hold on to what's most important, even if it means admitting that what she's always wanted isn't what she actually needs? So this definitely sounds like it's going to be a novel of high family drama, right? You have a woman, she is trying to rise up in her law firm. She is going to be asked to help this very, very wealthy family. You have 3 siblings in that family who are at each other's throats. You have a dying mother, a father who is divorcing that mother. It sounds like it's going to be very, very messy and exploring those complicated family dynamics that Book of the Month just absolutely loves to feature in their releases. So this is one that I would not be surprised to be featured. And again, it is Renee Ahdieh's adult debut novel. I have never read anything by Renee Ahdieh, but this is one I am intrigued to learn a little bit more about and to see if I could be interested in picking it up in the future. All right, and then the next book that I have for this category is a book called A Family Matter by Claire Lynch. 1982. Dawn is a young mother still adjusting to life with her husband when Hazel lights up her world like a torch in the dark. Theirs is the kind of connection that's impossible to resist, and suddenly life is more complicated and more joyful than Dawn ever expected. But she has responsibilities and commitments. She has a daughter. 2022. Heron has just received news from his doctor that turns everything upside down. Telling Maggie, his only child, seems impossible. Heron can't tell her about his diagnosis, just as he can't reveal all of the other secrets he's been keeping from her for so many years. A Family Matter is a heartbreaking and hopeful exploration of love and loss, intimacy and injustice, custody and care, and whether it is possible to heal from wounds of the past in the changed world of today. So that is very, very vague, but if I'm reading this correctly, it sounds like in 1982, we have a young wife and mother who maybe is exploring her sexuality with a woman, and then 40 years later, we could be dealing with the consequences of that. I'm not entirely sure, but this does say that it is a most anticipated book according to Goodreads and Today.com, so it seems like this could be getting a lot of buzz, and it does seem like it contains those themes that Book of the Month really loves to explore, right? So that is why I wanted to go ahead and mention it here as a top contender for this category. Another debut that seems like it's going to be a top contender for this category is a book called Notes on Infinity by Austin Taylor. Zoe, the daughter of an MIT professor who grew up in her brother's shadow, can envision her future anew at Harvard. Jack, a boy in Zoe's organic chemistry class with unruly hair and a gleam of competitiveness, matches her intellect and curiosity with every breath. When Jack refers Zoe for a position in a prestigious professor's lab, the two become entwined as colleagues, staying up late to discuss scientific ideas. They find themselves on the cusp of a breakthrough, the promise of immortality through a novel anti-aging drug. Zoe and Jack set off on their new project in secret. Finding encouraging results, they bring their work to an investor, drop out of Harvard, and form a startup. But after the money, the magazine covers, and the national news stories detailing their success, Zoe and Jack receive a startling accusation that threatens to destroy both the company they built and their partnership. A captivating novel about young love, the allure of immortality, and the recklessness that can come with early success. Notes on Infinity asks, how far would you go to achieve your dreams? So in some ways, that seems like it could have a little bit of a speculative element, as you have a drug that is going to apparently prevent you from aging and potentially living forever. But in some ways, I'm also getting a little bit of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow vibes by Gabrielle Zevin, because it follows two young people who develop something big and gain nationwide fame and attention, right? And how that's going to affect their relationship. This is one that I am very curious about. I'm pretty cautious with regard to like the literary fiction that I pick up these days, but I would be interested to see, especially with regard to this anti-aging drug, like how it all plays out and why these accusations are being lobbied against them and what's actually going on with these two people. So this one sounds really fascinating to me. This next book is coming out towards the later part of the month. So again, this is one we could see featured in July, if at all, but it is a book called A Beautiful Family by Jennifer Trevelyan. At 10 years old, she catches more than her parents and older sister suspect. Over their summer break, her mother plans to finish her novel, her father wants to grill and watch cricket, and her 15-year-old sister hopes to catch the eye of a local lifeguard. With everyone around her distracted, she teams up with a new friend to solve a mystery that haunts this vacation community. They'll close the case of what happened to Charlotte, a child who was presumed drowned 2 years earlier. But things aren't quite as they seem, and as the children look for clues, they inadvertently dislodge information they wish they'd never uncovered. Are her parents happy together? Is her sister putting her trust in the wrong people? Is their vacation rental as safe as it seems? And when someone else goes missing, the family finds themselves at the center of an urgent police investigation. Debut novelist Jennifer Trevelyan viscerally captures the confusion and frustration of childhood, the fraught but unshakable bonds between sisters, and the dangers that lurk in the white lies we tell, especially about the people we love the most. So again, this is going to encompass a lot of themes that Book of the Month loves to explore. It does sound like there's going to be a family drama at the center of this, but also a mystery that they are trying to solve, and then this family gets caught up in that mystery and the police investigation. I do believe that this is primarily going to be told from the perspective of a child, which I don't love, but this is one that I have seen going around, and I do think it is something that is right up Book of the Month's alley, and they could potentially feature it. All right, my friends, we are almost there. We only have 2 books left to talk about. This next one is a book called What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. This says, growing up in an isolated cabin in Montana in the mid-1990s, Jane knows only the world that she and her father live in, the wood stove that heats their home, the vegetable garden where they try to eke out a subsistence, the books of 19th century philosophy that her father gives her to read in lieu of going to school. Her father is elusive about their pasts, giving Jane little beyond the facts that they once lived in the Bay Area and that her mother died in a car accident, the crash propelling him to move Jane off the grid to raise her in a Walden-esque utopia. As Jane becomes a teenager, she starts pushing against the boundaries of her restricted world. She begins to accompany her father on his occasional trips away from the cabin. But when Jane realizes that her devotion to her father has made her an accomplice to a horrific crime, she flees Montana to the only place she knows to look for answers about her mysterious past and her mother's death, San Francisco. It is a city in the midst of a seismic change where her quest to understand herself will force her to reckon with both the possibilities and the perils of the fledgling internet, and where she will come to question everything she values. In this sweeping suspenseful novel from best-selling author Janelle Brown, we see a young woman on a quest to understand how we come to know ourselves. It is a bold and unforgettable story about parents and children, nature and technology, innocence and knowledge, the losses of our past, and our dreams for the future. You have this girl who was raised very much in isolation in rural Montana, where her father has been very secretive about their life before they came there. He has been the one that's been educating her and raising her, and now she kind of realizes that something has happened. She's been an unwilling accomplice to this, and she kind of flees. And so this is going to cause her to question her whole life and what she knows. And then she's probably going to have to learn how to live in the modern world with the technology and internet and all of that stuff. So that is actually really, really fascinating to me. I would be very interested to explore this a little bit more. It says that she is a best-selling author, and I've never heard of her before. I don't think Book of the Month has ever featured her before. I could be wrong about that, but I would definitely be interested to see this one on Book of the Month in the month of June. All right, and then the very last book that I have to talk about in this video is a book called Flashlight by Susan Choi. One night, Louisa and her father take a walk on the beach. He's carrying a flashlight. He cannot swim. Later, Louisa is found washed up by the tide, barely alive. Her father is gone, and she is 10 years old. In chapters that shift from one member to the next, turning back again and again to that night by the sea, Susan Choi's flashlight chases the shockwaves of one family's catastrophe. Louisa is an only child of parents who have severed themselves from the past. Her father, Sirk, an ethnic Korean born and raised in Japan, lost touch with his family when they bought into the promises of post-war Pyongyang and relocated to the DPRK. Her American mother, Anne, is estranged from her family after a reckless adventure in her youth. And then there's Tobias, Anne's illegitimate son, whose reappearance in their lives will have astonishing consequences. What really happened to Louisa's father? Why did he take Louisa and her mother to Japan just before he disappeared? And how can we love or make sense of our lives lives when there's so much we can't see. So again, that is overall pretty vague. It's not really giving you much, but it does definitely sound like it's going to explore those complicated family dynamics that we see quite frequently in books featured on Book of the Month. This is one that I've seen going around. It is getting a lot of buzz. It's a highly anticipated read in a lot of places, and so I do think that this could be one that Book of the Month features as well. All right, everyone, that is it. Those are all the books that I think could potentially be featured on Book of the Month in the month of June, either as add-ons or as main selections. As per usual, if there are any releases that you think have a high probability of being featured, please comment them down below, or let me know at the very least what you hope to see featured on Book of the Month in the month of June. Or if you made it to the end of this video and you were not feeling chatty, go ahead and just leave me a flashlight emoji in honor of that last book that I referenced in this video. And as always, if you like this video, or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I typically post 2 videos a week, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays, and I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos. Or if you'd prefer to connect with me outside of BookTube, you can always find links to my Goodreads, Instagram, Patreon, and YouTube memberships down below, along with any books featured in the video. Until next time, y'all. Bye.